July 11th, 1998. A tour guide in Banff National Park finds human remains near a popular hiking trail. The most puzzling part of it all? So far, no one has figured out who this person was. Now, the RCMP is asking for public assistance with this case. Let's look into this one. On July 11th, 1998, a tour guide in Banff, Alberta, Canada, stumbled across human remains near Sulphur Mountain. At the time, the human remains were thought to have been there for 2 to 5 years. Police determined that they belonged to an adult male. They were somewhere between the age of 19 to 35, likely somewhere closer to 25. They were 5'10". They thought this person died more than 2 years prior to 1998. An interesting detail is that they thought the male possibly had rickets in infancy. DNA was taken from the remains and uploaded into the National DNA Databank. Police then attempted to cross-reference the DNA profile with missing persons files, but this really didn't bring any results, so they had to keep looking for something else. Now back to Sulphur Mountain for a second. See, people usually go to the front side of the mountain. That's because there's a gondola there that takes you to the top, and there's a restaurant up there and a platform. It's where a lot of tourists go to get pictures and see the sights. But let's look at this area. It's the back side of the mountain. It's an area much less frequented, and this is important. Now, the RCMP have been quite vague with this exact location here, but it's safe to say that the remains were found in this general area, which is quite a large amount of space, but it's tough to narrow it down. Now, police combed through the forest here, and they found several key items. One of them was a black wallet with the golden words Amity on the front, an assortment of keys, a War Amps tag, and 2 photographs with an address written on the back of one of them. So what do these items tell us? Let's start with the wallet, made by Amity, at one time the largest manufacturer of wallets in North America. It's not something unusual to find in a historical case like this, and, they were reasonably priced wallets that most people could afford. What's more important, though, are the 2 photographs found inside the wallet. So this is the first one. It's very difficult to make sense of course, but if we focus in on it a bit, we can see that there's 3 women in the photo. Problem with this photograph is it's really badly damaged and there's not much we can use or take from it as an information source. That being said, there is enough information I find with this photo that if the right person saw it, perhaps they could recognize something. Something about this second photo is haunting to me. It's a photo of a woman and we can see some distinguishable features. This looks to me like a Victorian-style chair in the background, and we can also see the outline of her hair. This has been damaged due to exposure to the elements. The one thing about this photograph that's a shame is that there's probably more clues that have been lost because of how bad the damage is to it. But it didn't take long for investigators to notice what was on the backside of these photographs, and that was an address located in Quebec. Now, this address is going to take us to the other side of Canada, St. Jerome. This is right next to Montreal, Quebec. This address leads us to a seemingly regular house. It's really hard to say why this is on the back of a photograph, but I will add, this is not a new house, so it's been there for a while. All that the RCMP have said publicly about this address is that it's near a senior's home or hospital. Now, about these keys that were found. The first key is for a Chrysler vehicle. It belongs to a 60s, 70s, and even all the way up to 80s Chrysler vehicle. But it's not quite as simple as that because Chrysler also made Plymouth vehicles, and these were also popular in North America. The second key is also a Chrysler key. This is thought to be a key for the boot, so the trunk of the car. It took me a while to figure out what the third key was or what the name on it was, and it's Briggs Stratton. The fourth key appears to be for a fuel cap. Let's look into some of the theories here, and the first theory is that the man was a hiker who accidentally perished. So as I said, the remains were found on the backside of Sulphur Mountain. There's the gondola that goes up to the top, but there's also a lot of hiking trails around there, and that's very popular, not just with locals, but with tourists. The backside of Sulphur Mountain is not accessible at all. Here's the problem. First, you have unsafe terrain. You got steep slopes and dangerous trails. If somebody was hiking and they fell, that's all it would take. That's not even going into the wildlife that you could encounter as well. It's so dangerous that authorities actually advise not even to go there. One of the most important details of this whole case is that despite investigators finding car keys, no car was ever recovered. We haven't talked about the TB tag yet. This is the War Amps Association in Canada, and one of the services that the War Amps offers to the general public is the recovery of lost car keys, and they still do this. But basically, if you have a War Amps tag on your keys, if someone finds them, then they're deposited into a mailbox by the kind person and returned to the rightful owner. This War Amps tag could have solved this case alone. But the problem is that there were no records kept about this information prior to 1998, which is just a terrible coincidence. This War Amps tag was issued in British Columbia. So the remains were found in Alberta, there was an address from Quebec, and there was a War Amps tag from British Columbia. So we have clues from all over the place here. And this brings us to the second theory, which is the man was killed, and these are actually red herrings. If you consider the fact that the tag and the address are both from completely different places, in addition to where the remains were found, it's reasonable to think that this is deliberately misleading. A lot of people think Canada is a very peaceful place, and that's true. But if you were a gang member in Quebec during the 1970s and even the 80s, it wasn't very peaceful. But it was impossible to get any kind of indication if foul play was involved because of decomposition. The third theory is that the man was a tourist from somewhere outside of Canada. Given that nothing came up in Canadian records when they were cross-referenced, it's speculated that this could have been indeed a foreigner. A forensic anthropologist familiar with this case has noted that just because some of the evidence points to the man being from Canada, this isn't for certain. For example, the address on the back of the photo might have just been someone he wanted to visit while he was in Canada. Also, the keys may not have even been his. The RCMP have said they looked into this possibility, and I believe them, but I think the problem is that a lack of records is holding them back. If you know any information that could help investigators with this case, please call the RCMP. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.